Most people think they could handle living with Native American tribes, but the Comanche weren't just any tribe. They were something else entirely. Within your first sunrise, you'd face a test that has nothing to do with hunting or fighting. What happens next would shock you. The Great Plains weren't exactly what you'd call a welcoming vacation spot. One minute, you're sweating bullets under a blazing sun that could fry an egg on a rock, and the next, you're shivering like a chihuahua in a snowstorm. The Comanche didn't have the luxury of cranking up the thermostat or ducking into an air-conditioned mall when Mother Nature threw her tantrums. Your modern wardrobe? Forget about it. Those designer jackets and moisture-wicking athletic wear would be about as useful as a chocolate teapot out there. The Comanche crafted their clothing from buffalo hides and deerskin, stitching together protection that had to last through months of wear. Sure, it wasn't exactly breathable fabric, but it beat freezing to death when winter winds came howling across the plains like angry spirits. But here's where things get really interesting. Quick thinking wasn't just helpful. It was the difference between living and becoming a human popsicle. When storm clouds gathered on the horizon, there was no weather app to check, no 5-day forecast to plan your week around. The Comanche had to read the sky like you read your smartphone, except their battery never died and lives depended on their accuracy. A sudden hailstorm could destroy months of dried meat supplies in minutes. Tornadoes didn't come with warning sirens. Flash floods turned peaceful streams into raging death traps faster than you could say evacuation route. The tribe had to be ready to pack up their entire lives and move at a moment's notice, like the world's most intense game of musical chairs. Then there's the fact that every cloud, every shift in wind direction, every nervous flutter of bird wings told a story. While you're probably still trying to figure out if those clouds look like rain clouds or just regular fluffy ones, a Comanche warrior could predict a 3-day blizzard by watching how the horses position themselves and feeling subtle changes in air pressure. The psychological toll alone would break most people today. We get stressed when our Wi-Fi goes down for an hour. Well, try living where every single day brings the possibility of losing everything you own to weather that makes hurricane coverage look like a gentle spring shower. And speaking of survival skills that would leave modern folks in the dust, the Comanche had mastered something that separated the living from the dead on those unforgiving plains. Their relationship with horses wasn't just transportation, it was pure artistry in motion, and without it, you wouldn't last long enough to worry about the weather. The Comanche were basically the Formula One drivers of the Great Plains, except their cars had 4 legs and a serious attitude problem. While most of us struggle to ride a bicycle without training wheels until we're 8, Comanche children were galloping across vast prairies before they could properly tie their own moccasins. Here's the thing about horse mastery. It wasn't just about looking cool, your life literally depended on it. Every single day. When you woke up as a Comanche, you didn't check your phone or grab coffee. You checked on your horses. Were they healthy? Any injuries from yesterday's ride? Because if your horse was having a bad day, you were probably going to have a worse one. These weren't pets or weekend hobby animals. They were your transportation, your hunting partner, and often your ticket to staying alive. The average Comanche family owned anywhere from 5 to 15 horses. The wealthy ones? They had herds so large, you'd think they were running some kind of ancient Uber service. We're talking about managing dozens of these powerful animals daily, not just posting cute photos of them on social media. But here's where it gets brutal for modern folks. A typical day involved riding for 8 to 12 hours straight. Not a leisurely Sunday trot through the park. We're talking about thundering across unforgiving terrain, often while hunting buffalo or dodging enemies. Your thighs would be screaming after the first hour, assuming you didn't fall off and become prairie roadkill. The Comanche could shoot arrows with deadly accuracy while hanging off the side of a galloping horse. Meanwhile, most of us need both hands and perfect lighting just to thread a needle while sitting comfortably on a couch. Young warriors learned to control their horses using only their legs, leaving both hands free for weapons. They could pick up fallen comrades from the ground without stopping, perform complex battle maneuvers, and communicate with their horses through subtle body movements that would make professional equestrians weep with envy. Training horses was an art form that required patience, skill, and nerves of steel. A poorly trained horse in battle meant you were basically signing your own death warrant. No pressure there, right? Well, horse mastery was just the beginning of your survival challenges. Even if you somehow managed to become a decent rider without breaking every bone in your body, you'd still need to master the next crucial skill that separated the living from the very dead. You know what's really going to mess with your modern sensibilities? The fact that your nearest McDonald's would be about 200 years in the future. The Comanche didn't have the luxury of walking to a corner store when hunger struck. They had to kill it first. Buffalo hunting wasn't just grabbing a rifle and taking pot shots. These massive beasts weighed up to 2,000 pounds and could run 35 miles per hour. That's faster than you driving through a school zone. The Comanche had to coordinate like a military operation using nothing but horses, bows, and nerves of steel. Here's where it gets interesting. While you're struggling to hit a target at the local arcade, Comanche warriors could put an arrow through a buffalo's heart while riding full speed on horseback. They started practicing this stuff when they were barely tall enough to see over a pony's back. But the real kicker? Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, went to waste. You throw away leftovers after 2 days in the fridge. The Comanche used every single part of that buffalo. Meat for food, hide for clothing and shelter, bones for tools, sinew for thread. Even the stomach became a water container. Talk about sustainable living before it was cool. Then there's the preservation challenge that would make your head spin. No freezers, no vacuum-sealed packages, no expiration dates printed conveniently on the side. They had to dry meat in the sun, smoke it over fires, and make something called pemmican. Basically the world's first energy bar, but infinitely more disgusting to modern taste buds. The Comanche followed these herds across hundreds of miles of open prairie. Think your last family road trip was tough? Try moving your entire household every few weeks, chasing dinner across terrain that would challenge a modern ATV. They tracked migration patterns better than today's wildlife biologists, reading signs in the grass and dirt that would look like random scratches to you. And here's what really separates them from us. They had backup plans for their backup plans. Bad hunting season? Time to know which roots won't kill you and which insects actually taste decent. Your survival skills probably max out at knowing which takeout places deliver past midnight. The pressure was relentless. Miss too many shots, lose the herd's trail, or fail to preserve meat properly. And people starved. Makes your worst day at work look like a spa vacation. Speaking of pressure, hunting was just one piece of staying alive. Because while you're figuring out which end of the bow the arrow goes on, there's another challenge lurking that required completely different skills. You know that awkward feeling when you accidentally cut someone off in traffic and spend the next 5 minutes wondering if they're following you home? Well, multiply that by about 1,000. Throw in some war paint and razor-sharp arrows, and you've got daily life in Comanche territory. The thing is, the Comanche weren't just dealing with one angry neighbor. They were surrounded by dozens of different tribes, each with their own agendas, grudges, and ideas about who owned what piece of land. Makes your homeowners association look like a tea party, doesn't it? But here's where it gets really tricky. One day you might be trading horses with the Kiowa, sharing a meal and laughing around the fire. The next week, those same guys could be raiding your camp at dawn. Talk about keeping you on your toes. Modern folks like us are used to predictable relationships. Your coworker might annoy you, but they're probably not going to ambush you in the parking lot with a tomahawk. The Comanche lived in a world where yesterday's trading partner could become tomorrow's mortal enemy faster than you can say diplomatic immunity. And the weird part is, they actually got pretty good at this constant juggling act. Comanche leaders had to be part politician, part warrior, and part fortune teller. They'd sit in council meetings that made United Nations summits look like child's play, trying to figure out which tribes were trustworthy and which ones were planning something nasty. Then there's the whole warrior culture aspect that would absolutely wreck most of us modern softies. These weren't weekend warriors playing paintball in the suburbs. Comanche boys started training for combat before they could properly tie their moccasins. By the time they were teenagers, they could shoot a bow with deadly accuracy while hanging upside down from a galloping horse. Let's not forget that being at peace didn't mean grabbing a latte and binge-watching Netflix. Peace was more like a temporary ceasefire while everyone restocked their weapons and planned their next moves. The psychological pressure alone would probably send half of us to therapy. Women and children had to be ready to pack up and flee at a moment's notice. No time to grab your favorite pillow or complain about the Wi-Fi password. When scouts spotted enemy war parties on the horizon, It was move fast or become someone else's trophy. This constant state of alert was exhausting, but it was just another Tuesday for the Comanche. Speaking of exhausting, wait until you hear about their nomadic lifestyle and what it really meant to call the entire Great Plains your backyard. The modern American moves about as often as a tree. We relocate maybe 5 times in our entire lives, and each move requires hiring professionals, renting trucks, and probably having at least 3 nervous breakdowns over where we pack the coffee maker. The Comanche, they were the ultimate nomads, packing up their entire civilization and hitting the road faster than you could say, buffalo migration. We're talking about people who could dismantle a village of 50 families and be riding toward the horizon before your morning coffee got cold. But here's where it gets tricky for modern folks. Every single person in the tribe had a specific job during these moves. Women could break down a teepee in under 15 minutes, and that includes packing all the household goods. Men managed the horse herds and scouted ahead for the best routes. Children? They weren't passengers getting bored in the back seat. They were responsible for smaller items and helping with the pack animals. Let's not forget the social structure that made this all possible. Your decisions weren't just your own. The tribe operated like a well-oiled machine where individual preferences took a back seat to group survival. Want to sleep in because you had a rough night? Too bad. The buffalo herd moved 20 miles east and everyone's leaving at dawn. The community aspect was intense. Privacy was basically non-existent. Everyone knew everyone's business, which sounds like a nightmare to our modern sensibilities, but was actually crucial for survival. If someone was sick, injured, or struggling, the entire group knew immediately and could help. And the weird part is how light they traveled. No storage units, no garages full of stuff we haven't touched in years. Everything they owned had to be portable and useful. That decorative vase your aunt gave you? Forget it. If it couldn't be carried on horseback and didn't serve multiple purposes, it stayed behind. The leadership structure was fascinating too. Chiefs and councils made decisions, but everyone had to buy in completely. There was no room for the kind of endless debates we have today about where to go for dinner. When the council decided to move, you moved. When they chose a campsite, that was home until the next decision. This constant motion required mental flexibility that would exhaust most modern people within days. No GPS, no weather apps, no hotels if things went wrong. Just the endless cycle of pack, move, unpack, scout, pack again. Then there's another challenge that would break most modern people. And it's not what you'd expect when dealing with the natural world around them. When your stomach starts rumbling on the Great Plains, you can't exactly call DoorDash. The Comanche had to become walking encyclopedias of plant knowledge, knowing which roots would cure a fever and which berries would send you to meet your ancestors a bit earlier than planned. Every Comanche could identify dozens of medicinal plants by sight, smell, and even taste. They knew that willow bark could ease pain, long before aspirin companies figured out the same thing and made billions. Prairie sage helped with digestive issues, while wild mint soothed upset stomachs better than any pink liquid you'd find at a modern pharmacy. But here's where it gets tricky for us modern folks. These weren't casual nature walks to pick flowers. The Comanche had to remember which plants grew where, when they were most potent, and how to prepare them properly. One mistake could mean the difference between healing a wound and making it worse. Then there's the wildlife situation. We're talking about sharing your backyard with grizzly bears, wolves, and rattlesnakes. The Comanche didn't have the luxury of calling animal control when a mountain lion decided to check out their camp. They lived alongside these creatures, understanding their behaviors and patterns like we understand traffic lights. Most of us today jump on chairs when we see a spider. Well, the Comanche would have found that amusing, considering they regularly dealt with creatures that could actually end your story permanently. They knew which animals to avoid, which ones were territorial, and how to read the warning signs that meant time to pack up and move. Their spiritual beliefs weren't separate from survival. They were survival. Every hunt, every healing ritual, every decision about where to camp next was connected to their understanding of nature's rhythms. They believed the land would provide, but only if you respected it and understood its language. The Comanche could read ecosystems like we read street signs. They knew that certain bird calls meant water was nearby, or that specific insect activity indicated weather changes. This wasn't mystical mumbo-jumbo. It was practical knowledge that kept them alive when modern weather apps would have been utterly useless. Modern people often see nature as something to conquer or escape from. Air conditioning, bug spray, grocery stores. We've built walls between ourselves and the natural world. The Comanche saw themselves as part of the ecosystem, not its masters. Speaking of walls and barriers, wait until you discover how Comanche women managed to juggle responsibilities that would make today's multitasking champions look like amateurs. If you think modern women juggle too many responsibilities, wait until you meet a Comanche woman from the 1800s. These ladies redefined what it meant to be a multitasker. While her husband was out hunting buffalo or planning raids, a Comanche woman was essentially running a mobile corporation. She had to tan hides into leather that wouldn't crack in winter or rot in summer rain. Ever tried making leather from scratch? It's like trying to perform surgery with your eyes closed while riding a roller coaster. But that was just the warm-up act. Every morning, she'd wake up knowing she had to gather firewood, prepare meals, mend clothing, craft tools, and keep the family's portion of the teepee in perfect condition. And remember, this wasn't a permanent house with running water and electricity. This was a portable home that needed to be packed up and moved whenever the tribe decided to relocate. The really mind-blowing part? She did all this while carrying a baby on her back or keeping toddlers from wandering into dangerous territory. Modern parents complain about taking kids to the grocery store. Try hauling water from a distant creek while watching 3 children and skinning a deer. Comanche women were also the teachers of the tribe. They passed down crucial survival skills to their daughters and taught young boys the basics before they graduated to warrior training. No YouTube tutorials or instruction manuals here. One mistake in teaching could literally mean life or death for the next generation. Then, there's the clothing situation. Every piece of clothing your family wore, hand-sewn by mom, every moccasin, every winter coat, every decorative element. She wasn't shopping at the mall on weekends. She was creating entire wardrobes from animal skins using bone needles and sinew thread. The physical demands alone would crush most people today. These women had grip strength that would make modern rock climbers jealous. They could work a full day, then help pack an entire camp when scouts spotted danger on the horizon. What really sets them apart is how they balanced individual tasks with community responsibilities. When someone in the tribe got sick or injured, the women collectively stepped up. No health insurance or emergency services existed. Their day started before sunrise and ended well after dark. Rest wasn't really an option when survival was always on the line. Makes sense, right? Speaking of survival challenges, the daily grind was just one piece of a much larger puzzle the Comanche faced in their rapidly changing world. The Comanche didn't just survive change, they mastered it like a chess grandmaster playing 3 games at once. When Europeans showed up with their horses and diseases, most tribes crumbled. Not the Comanche. They looked at those horses and thought, well, this changes everything. And boy, did it ever. Within 50 years, they transformed from walking hunters into the most feared mounted warriors on the continent. That's like going from riding a bicycle to piloting a fighter jet. Your grandmother probably takes longer to learn how to use her smartphone's camera. But here's where it gets interesting. The diseases that came with European contact, smallpox, measles, typhus, were killing native populations at rates that would make modern pandemics look like a mild cold. The Comanche? They developed immunity faster than most tribes and kept expanding their territory. They didn't have hospitals or vaccines, just raw human endurance and adaptation. Think about how you handle change. Your favorite restaurant changes its menu and you're devastated for weeks. The Comanche adapted to entirely new weapons, new enemies, new diseases, and new ways of life without missing a beat. They incorporated captured Spanish children into their tribes, learned new languages, and figured out European trade systems, all while maintaining their nomadic lifestyle. Then there's their mental flexibility. When traditional hunting grounds became contested, they didn't sit around complaining about the good old days. They found new territories, developed new strategies, and often turned the tables on their enemies. It's like watching someone lose their job and immediately start 3 successful businesses while training for a marathon. The really mind-blowing part? They did all this without Google, YouTube tutorials, or self-help books. No 10 steps to surviving cultural upheaval guides. Just observation, trial and error, and an almost supernatural ability to bounce back from setbacks. Modern people struggle when their Wi-Fi goes down for an hour. The Comanche rebuilt their entire civilization around the horse in less than 2 generations. They went from pedestrians to the lords of the southern plains faster than most people change careers. And they didn't just adapt, they thrived. By the early 1800s, they controlled an area larger than most European countries. They had Spanish settlers paying them tribute, Mexican armies avoiding their territory, and American pioneers taking detours that added hundreds of miles to their journeys. But even this incredible adaptability had its limits, and those limits would eventually reshape the entire American frontier in ways nobody saw coming.